Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast presented by Shadified Salon and Barbershop here in Edmonton. And I am your host, Joshua Marshall. And we're going to get right to it. Our guest is waiting in the wing. He is the TSN Director of Scouting, and he's a hockey analyst, and he is a Stanley Cup champion as well. We have Craig Button back with us. Craig, how's it going?
It's going good, Josh. It's the season's underway. It feels like the season has started, and yet, you know, it feels like we've been playing for a while. There's all kinds of storylines early on in the regular season, and certainly the excitement is building, and in some places concern.
Yes, there is a lot of concern around the league for sure, and let's start off with a little bit of concerning things. Let's start with some NHL stuff, and we'll finish off with some great CHL stuff to end. You put out a good
Okay.
tweet earlier, but just a quick thought on obviously Rucker McGorty. We kind of know the situation that happened during the summer with him, kind of wanting to play, not wanting to play for Winnipeg, but then getting traded for Braden Yeager over to the Penguins, and obviously the Penguins recently just sent him down to Wilkes-Barre. Kind of where you're at with that. I think you're probably would be in the thought process that rushing kids isn't the right thing to do, and I think maybe going down to the American Hockey League shouldn't be a bad thing for him. Just kind of wondering your thoughts where that is, or is with this whole situation, where are you at with it?
Well, where I'm at with it is the Pittsburgh Penguins are visiting the Winnipeg Jets on Sunday. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins pulled them out of that possibility.
Okay,
That's where I'm at.
yeah,
I think they just felt that, because if you bring him there and he's a healthy scratch, right? Well, then that just raises questions. But if you send him down to the minors and just tell him, hey, just go play for a couple games, we're not going to expose you to Winnipeg. That's what I think is that's why I think they sent him down.
okay, interesting. I never would have
Yeah.
thought of that.
Yeah.
That's why you are the bright mind that you are. No, that's a good
Well,
point.
I don't. That's just what I think. I mean, I like. Listen, I mean, Rutger. I know Rutger personally. I love Rutger. I think he's a really good player. I think he's just a quality person. And I felt the same way about Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah,
When last year with the situation, I'm not privy to why the players feel that they might be better served to play outside or in an organization outside of the one that drafted him. But I will always say this about the players, you know, just be upfront about it and just say, I want to go and I don't want to play here. And I think that you might not like the reasons, but when players take control of their career and they feel that someplace else would be better for them, that to me is taking care of, like, they're not cattle. The
yeah,
NHL teams don't own the players. Okay, they select them, they draft them, and this isn't on the NHL teams either. This is strictly about player decides I'm better served somewhere else, and now it's up to the team to try to deal with it. And as much as you might not like it, you still got to deal with it. And the Philadelphia Flyers did, certainly the Winnipeg Jets did, and now you move forward. You can't bemoan number one what's unfolded. You can't begrudge the players, and that's just the way it is. And I have no problem with the player doing it. I have no problem with the players saying I'm not going to play here. We see players ask for trades. We see players not feel that the situation is not in their best interest, or they don't feel that it's working out. That's okay, deal with it and then move on. But I think for Rutger, the Pittsburgh Penguins are happy to have Rutger. I think the Winnipeg Jets are really happy to have Braden Yeager. I think Braden Yeager's a terrific young prospect and somebody that's going to help the Winnipeg Jets in the years to come.
yeah. They're two good players, and
Yeah.
and I remember that 2 years ago would have been now around, I think around 2 years ago. When I saw you in Red Deer at the Helenka Gretzky Cup, Braden Yeager had a great showing in that Helenka Gretzky Cup and continued to keep showing that progression. And that he wasn't drafted at that point. So, these are two great hockey players. They're going to be great hockey players for years to come. And they're going to be great for our game and great for us as analysts to break down some of the highlights that they're going to be
Yeah.
having throughout their career. So I agree there. Let's quickly go over to Montreal just real quick. Obviously, I think it was a pretty good video that your TSN did on the fact that maybe let's pump the brakes on Lane Hudson here. Obviously, he had a rough night on Monday, but he's going to be a hell of a player, isn't he, Craig? And we shouldn't worry about being a -4. I think the progression. Where are you at there? Am I
No,
wrong
no,
to
no,
think
you're
that?
good.
Yeah.
I've watched Lane play since he was 16 years of age. Okay. And I have not seen a level of play, number one, that Lane is not capable of excelling at. And I don't care. He was as a 16-year-old, he was playing with the U18 group. As a 17-year-old, he was controlling the whole game. Was in the Boston University, he's a terrific player. Plays at the World Junior, terrific player. Goes back to Boston University, amongst the best players in the entire nation, and certainly amongst the best defensemen. And he plays 2 games last year at the end of the season. Outstanding again, World Junior, outstanding. We know he's at the highest level right now. There has not been a level that Lane Hudson has ascended to that he has not been able to master and excel at. And listen, I've seen players like Hall of Fame players have rough nights. To expect that a young player, it might not have a rough night or two or three, as they're trying to navigate their first pass through the National Hockey League, I think is unrealistic. But it doesn't change how good they are or how excited you should be about them. But when it comes to Lane's unique. Lane has those qualities that you don't see. I mean, he's so good with his mind. He's so good with his hands. He's so good in his skating, and then he combines all three of those things in an exponential way, where it becomes 3 times 3 is 9. It's not 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's an exponential equation when it comes to Lane, and certainly, I don't know if you be excited. I mean, there's lots to be excited about for Montreal Canadiens fans with Lane Hudson.
Yeah, they're just what they've done with drafting and developing. They're going to
Oh
get there.
yeah.
It's so good for sure. Let's move over to a kind of a veteran player, and obviously Elias Pettersson in Vancouver is a lot to talk about right now. He has only scored one 5-on-5 goal, and that was the day he signed the contract or the day after. So it's been a rough 27 last games for him. Where are you at with your level of concern of his play? Is it concerning, or do you see him getting out of this funk anytime soon?
His play is concerning because if you include the playoffs and the last 49 games, and we're not including Thursday night's games, if you look at those 46 games or 49 games, he has 8 goals. And Elias Pettersson, so the play is concerning. Elias Pettersson is a capable star. There's no question in my mind that he can impact the game in a lot of different ways. He's not, to me, watching Elias right now, he's not doing the things that give him the ability to impact the game. I don't see a player that's initiating. I don't see a player that's attacking. I use the term, he's playing on his back foot. You need to play on your front foot. You need to play on your toes to be able to use your skills. When you're playing on your back foot and you're tentative, you're not going to be able to put defenders back on their heels. You're not going to be able to open up space, and that to me is where he's at right now. So what I would be doing is trying to impress upon him, hey, attack. Play the game like in the manner where you're taking your skills and imposing yourself on the opponent. Because when he does that, he backs up opponents, he creates space for himself, which creates all kinds of opportunities. But when you're not doing it, it's easier for defenders to play up on you. That space doesn't become as abundant as you're accustomed to. But it's not about no opponent's going to give you space. You got to create it. And I think that he's more than capable of creating it. Now, if we get into another 25 games, I think my level of concern would be a lot greater. But I think right now it's about, hey, it's not good enough. He knows it's not good enough. So let's work. Let's get working together here to help you take those immense skills and put them into place where you can be the impactful player that I know he is, and I think the Vancouver Canucks know that he is.
Yeah, yeah.
I always say this, Josh, and I think it's important. Player, players, people in life, any walk, nobody needs support when things are going well. What you need to do is just support people and believe in people when things aren't going well. If you believe that they're capable, and I think that that's where it's at right now with Elias Pettersson. I don't see any need to pile on in terms of being negative. It's all there. We all know that he hasn't been able to be at the production rate that we think that he is capable of, and certainly we have seen from him. So, got to help him get back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I put out a tweet earlier about Joseph Wall, just kind of feeling somewhat a little bit bad that he's kind of been taking this beating in a way of, and I guess maybe some of it's justified with his, I guess there's that line, your best ability is availability. So, in terms of him not being available for Toronto, but, it's kind of carried on for 2 weeks. And, hey, Elaine Waugh, who's his agent, has been on this podcast several times. And, I know Elaine very well. And, I think at times maybe we just need to be a little bit slower on, the piling on that you kind of say that they're not saying you're piling on, but just there needs to be kind of a better understanding that, let's support when things are bad, because we know we don't the support when it's good. It's always going to be good. I don't know if you want to add to that or.
I'll add to it because I've watched Joseph Wall play since he was 16 years of age.
Yeah.
And the challenge for Joseph is he's been playing year in, year out, year in, year out for 8 seasons now with not being available.
Mm-hmm.
And he has ability. We know he has ability. I know he has ability. He's shown capability, but what he has not shown is availability. And and that's not to say that there. I mean, he's had surgeries. He's had issues with injuries, but it's a requirement for players. It's a requirement that when your job description says this is what you need to do, you need to be available.
Yeah.
And that's not blaming them. That's not being negative. Those are the facts. So, my commentary on Joseph and, is not so much about Joseph. We know where he's been at. My commentary on Joseph is if I'm the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Craig Berube, my concern isn't Joseph Wall.
Yeah.
My concern, you go work with the medical staff, you go work with the training staff and do what you got to do. Craig Berube's got to put guys into the net that he can feel comfortable with and that are available to him. You can't be concerned with who's not available to you. And that doesn't mean you're not supportive of Joseph, but he's been plagued by injuries for a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, maybe the training regiment that he has in the summertime might have to change. I know there was some talk about that. I know Tree Living talked about that in the summer before the season, before everyone broke away after the playoffs were over. But it was right game one. It was here. It is all over again. But for sure, let's last one on the NHL and move over to some CHL stuff. The Oilers are playing right now in Nashville. Obviously, we're out here in Edmonton, and the Calgary Flames are looking good. But just a quick thought on what we're seeing in Calgary, and then Oilers and the Predators are 1-1. It looks like they'll be tied 1-1 after one here. But your thoughts on both teams here and what you see concerning and positive with obviously one team versus the other team here.
There's nothing concerning about the Calgary Flames. I mean, the Calgary Flames coming into this team, they have good players. They have some really good players on this team. I mean, last year was a very different scenario for the Calgary Flames with respect to the number of unrestricted free agents they had coming up. And they made a decision that they were going to move in a direction that was not going to include those players. But they had players under contract. And when you have Rasmus Anderson and Mackenzie Weegar and you have Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri and Blake Coleman and you end up bringing in Kuzmenko. Sharon Govich was a really good ad. You start to look, and then they got some young players that are ready to come in there and play. You have a team. You have some really good players, and they're competitive and they're hard. Were there some question marks about how Dustin Wolf, how Dan Vladar would handle being the number one goaltender? Yeah, and they got to get into the net and prove that they can handle it. Some of the other players that were given some opportunities, coming in here, they pick up Clayton Pahal on waivers. They end up trading for Mir Manaf, right? These are all new opportunities. They signed Jake Bean. I mean, Jake Bean's been a capable NHL player. So I think that when it comes to the Calgary Flames, they're a competitive team. They were not going to be last year's San Jose Sharks with 20 wins.
No.
They were going to be a hard out. Now, to make the playoffs, I mean, you got to get 95, 96 points to make the playoffs at a minimum. That's not easy to do. And I think the Flames starting out 4-0 and being competitive, it's good. It's what you want to build. You want to build something that says this is what we're about. And I think they have that. And hey, you keep riding it, but they're not going to be any less competitive. We know they're not going to win every game. We know that there's going to be nights when they struggle. But all in all, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better start to a year with respect to showing everybody and themselves this is who we are. Now, as we move up the road to Edmonton, and you start to look at where they're at. I mean, I really believe in their first 3 games, maybe 3.5 games, that they were still in preseason mode.
Mhm.
That mentally they were still in a preseason mode. The first game against the Winnipeg Jets, I mean, I didn't give one player a passing grade, not one. Not one player got a passing grade. And then they play their next 2 games and not very good at all. And certainly, you score 3 goals in your first 3 games. I mean, that ain't going to get it done. That's never going to get it done. And so we know that the Edmonton Oilers went deep to the Stanley Cup, to the playoffs last year. We know that they have to improve the blue line because the blue line's simply not Stanley Cup caliber, Stanley Cup contending caliber. It isn't. And so we have faith that they'll do that. But most importantly, we know that they have a ton of talent. But will is a skill, Josh.
Yeah.
And their will meter in the first 3 games was way over here. Was way over here. They wanted to go easy. They thought it'd be easy. And that's why I say they were in preseason mode. You go 0-3, you're 3-2 down against the Flyers in their fourth game. You're feeling a little bit of a pinch between the shoulder blades, and McDavid and Draisaitl step up big time. Well, you know what? That's what you got to do, and you got to have players, and you got to have everybody ready to go.
Yeah.
I thought Mark Messier nailed it the other day. This Edmonton Oilers team isn't as good as the Edmonton Oilers team that finished. Now, they know that too.
Correct.
Now it's up to. I think one of the biggest things for the Edmonton Oilers is we know that they have cap space. We know that they have to improve the blue line. A lot of the blue liners that they'll be interested in are blue liners that other teams are going to be interested in. I don't think that Edmonton has the luxury of waiting until February. I think they're going to have to act.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to act in the next week or the next 2 weeks or whatever, but you're going to have to act a lot sooner. And I think you're going to have to act before the calendar turns to 2025.
Yeah, that the pressure is going to be on that if things don't get turned around quick. They still have a tough road trip. Like Nashville's still a good team. I know it hasn't been a great start for them, and then they play Dallas,
Nope.
and then you got Carolina, and then you got the Penguins, and Gino and Sid and Letang look like they're dialing back the clock a bit here and looking like they're the team from 2016 to 2018. But and obviously Malkin leading the NHL in scoring. But let's move over to some NHL stuff here, or CHL stuff. You put out a good tweet earlier today. Carter Martone, you think he's going to be in the conversation for going first overall? This looks like a pretty good class, but where are you at with Martone's game, and why you think he could be a player that could push for the first overall pick going into this year's draft?
Yeah, well, I think Porter has every single quality that every single team in the National Hockey League desires. He's got tons of skill. He's got tons of will. He's got physical advantages because he's a big guy. He can score. He can penalty kill. He can grind. I think about any type of game that you're in. Porter Martone can not only play in it, he can excel in it. And those types of qualities, when you have a player that possesses all those qualities, really good skater, really good puck skills, can shoot it, can think it, can compete, and then you put the size package into there. You know what? There's no way you can overlook Porter Martone. And no doubt in my mind, none that he has to be in the conversation for first overall. And I'm not talking about putting him in there. I'm talking about he's in the conversation for first overall.
Yeah.
Period.
And
There's nobody. This isn't Connor Bedard he's up against. Porter Martone might be setting he might be setting the ceiling here and saying, "You're chasing me."
yeah.
He's that good and he's that unique.
Yeah, he's got a good skill set, good right winger.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's amazing what and he just seems like he's getting better and better with time here. A player we've talked about before, and Blake Fiddler. Obviously Vernon and a great family that the Fiddler family are, and obviously Blake with the Oil Kings here. Where would you project him, and where did you have him projected right now going in, and what's your thought process on like what he brings to a team, because he seems like he's gotten better. I know you saw him at the Hunker Gretzky Cup. It seems like maybe his skating was more improving. So where are you at with him? And do you think he can be a first round pick this year?
So to answer your question, I think he can definitely be a first round draft pick. I don't think there's any question. I mean, he's competitive. He's smart. He understands. I think the biggest thing with Blake is he knows what his game is. He's
Yeah.
not trying to be something he isn't. I mean, he'll defend. I mean, he'll give you some offensive play and jump in there. Oliver Bonk, I believe, went 22, 23, and Oliver Bonk's going to play for 15 years in the National Hockey League. And I go back in time and I look at where Oliver was at this stage of the game, and I think that Blake is very similar to that type of a player. I think that Braden Schneider went somewhere. What I don't know if he went 20th or 21st to the Rangers. I don't think Blake is as physically imposing as Braden was. But those types of players, that I just talked about, when you start to look at where they went in the draft and how they're playing, and one guy's in the NHL, Braden Schneider, on a really good team. Oliver Bonk, like I said, is going to have a 15-year career. I see Blake Fiddler in that realm of player. He's competitive. He's hard. He's no fun to play against. And to me, he's not going to be a number one defenseman, but he's going to be a defenseman that just gives your team just a real rock solid defender and a rock solid person and leader back there that's going to do a lot of things. I mean, I believe next Tuesday they're announcing the CHL roster for the prospects game coming up in November. Now, I'm I mean, we have fun projecting rosters. I do that, and I have Blake Fiddler on my roster. I have a roster that'll be out tomorrow,
Okay.
and Blake Fiddler's on it. Blake Fiddler is right on it, and Blake Fiddler is a really good player, a really good hard player,
Yeah, he brings a lot to the table. His tangibles are
and
really
he's interesting because he can be he like as time goes on here, like I mean he can be a player that plays for Canada or plays for the U.S.
correct. Yeah, so there's the dual citizenship that weighs
Yep,
in the factor. So for sure, he's definitely worn both colors.
he
He's
has.
worn both. So we'll see where that trends. If Vernon's listening to this, let's lean to Canada there. But I know they love their home in Dallas, Texas. But
What and Blake has grown up in the United States. I mean, now he's got
yeah,
a taste of Canada, but that's where he's grown up, right? And I know how highly USA Hockey thinks of him, and certainly Vernon with his Canadian roots. But a lot of the kids that Blake grew up playing with and against are wearing the red, white, and blue.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Just a few more, two more before we get you out. Malcolm Spence, we've talked about him before too. We talked, I think, a couple years ago when he shined at the Hunker Gretzky Cup. And where are you at with his game and the skill set that he can bring? It, I think maybe he would be a projected top 10 pick, but is it way a chance he can move up higher than that?
I think it's a really good draft, Josh. I mean, you never say a player can't move himself higher, depending on how much they continue to improve and how teams are looking at. But to me, Malcolm Spence is again, I think he's going to be a 15-year NHL player, right? I mean, he's a terrific skater. He's a competitor. He's hard. And he's a catalyst. He makes stuff happen out there in a positive way. He's no fun to play against. I go back to the Holinka tournament back in 2023, and that tournament was played in Europe. And Canada started off with a little bit of a rough go against Finland in that tournament before really taking it up. But whenever the game needed to turn, it seemed that Malcolm Spence was the guy turning it in Canada's favor, and ultimately scores the golden goal in overtime against Czechia at the U18 tournament that where Canada won gold again in April. It was the same exact thing with Malcolm Spence. And by the way, I mean he won an OHL Cup gold. He won gold at the Olympia. He won gold at the U18. I mean, he helps you win. He's smart. And I don't think he's going to be an 85 point player in the NHL. He's going to be a player. He can play with really good players. He can play in any situation in the game, and he's no fun for an opponent to play. I love him. I love him. I love the way he plays. And to me, you'll probably hear, oh, well, what about the offense? What about the offense? You know what I say? What about the winning?
Yeah.
Because what he does is contributes to winning through his play every single shift. I love him.
Yeah, those winning habits are so valuable, so valuable. So
Oh, they are. And if you look around the league and you have that tier of player that's the elite offensive players, and we know who they are. We know who they are. And then and then it seems teams fall into this little pattern where they get into players where they hope they can be offensive and they might not be really good in some of the other details of the game, more weighted towards that offensive stuff. Then you get guys like Malcolm Spence that just become critically important to success.
yeah,
And to me, that's what I watch Adam Lowry play in Winnipeg. And Adam Lowry is as important to his team as any player on their respective team. I'm not saying he's as good as Connor McDavid. That'd be ridiculous to say. I'm talking about his importance to the Winnipeg Jets is measured differently than other players, and that's what Malcolm Spence does.
yeah,
And to me, those are qualities and attributes that you have to value. And I think it's amazing how teams and I don't say this as a criticism, but they talk about winning, and yet sometimes we not that we look past them or look over them, but we don't give as much credence and value to some of those things that might not be measured on a score sheet, but get measured in the win column.
yeah, yeah. You spoke to Adam Lowry there. I have a little good story about him. It's like obviously we've been the Flames have credentialed us with the media pass these past seasons, and I remember the Jets played. I think it was 3 games in 4 nights. It was a back to back after a game in Calgary. He just played 18 minutes the night before. I think 19 minutes that night. Changes out to his workout gear and just on the treadmill on the bike just right after the game is done and just putting in a workout in after 3 games in 4 nights. Like this is a captain, right? And it's if you're a young player seeing that, that's what it takes to win in this league and and be a leader in this league. So I think that was pretty cool. Obviously how the work that works out in the Flames down in the hallway down there, you kind of get to see the visiting team before you go into the Flames locker room and all that. The Saddle Dome very well, but I just thought that was amazing. Just walking by that and seeing, I was like, this guy just played 3 games in 4 nights and played 19 minutes, 20 minutes, and then just is putting in a workout in. So that's something pretty special to see that. Just one more before we get you out. Cameron Schmidt in the Western Hockey League here. As I say it, you smile, but he's obviously a Vancouver Giants player right now. He's leading, I think, the Western Hockey League in goals. Maybe he's a late round, first round pick, but the size could be questionable. But is there a way he can be this Cole Caulfield, Johnny Gaudreau kind of type of player? Where are you at with Cameron's game, and what do you like about his game? Where maybe he's going to push this year to put more notice on what he can do for his team in the Western Hockey League.
If you go to the game and you start watching the game and you're watching Cameron Schmidt, he's a dynamo. He's a full on dynamo. I mean, you watch him and you watch his skill. His skill is off the charts. He's hungry. He's smart. He's competitive. He wants to be a difference maker in the game, and more than that, he is. So I've said this to a number of people when I hear, "Oh, Cameron Schmidt, this and I get it." Okay, so I know what the tape measure says, and and everything that goes with it. There are very few players that are more talented than Cameron Schmidt in this draft. Very few that possess this skill set. So when it comes to the draft, you know, and teams are going to look at things, and some teams are going to not feel as comfortable taking a smaller player as other teams. And when you consider, how you just mentioned Johnny Gaudreau, who was a fourth round draft pick, and Cole Caulfield, who was the 15th overall draft pick. When you consider how successful they were, and you can't have success in the league with all small players,
Mm-hmm.
but there's exceptions to the rule. And the good small player has always been able to play in the NHL. Always. You can go back years. You can go back to wherever. Davey Keon, Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, he was Wayne Gretzky. They thought he was too small.
Martin St.
You know,
Louis.
the little guy from, from Sault Ste. Marie. Like, like you cannot continue to dismiss. What, Lane Hudson? Didn't we just talk about Lane Hudson?
Correct. Yeah.
Like, I will say this, like again, you can't you can't just have a team of all small players. But if you're gonna watch Cameron Schmidt play, and you're not gonna recognize the immense talent he has, the immense competitive fire that he possesses. You might say, hey, listen, we want this player, he's a little bit different, a little bit big. I get that. But don't dismiss the young man's high end skill. Don't dismiss his ability to impact the game. And for me, like, I love him. I Cameron Schmidt. I mean, he's a dynamo. I call him a dynamo. Are there players? I mean, I do a rating. I think I had him 11th or 12th or something, that he might go higher or whatnot. But to me, like, I'm trying to rank where I think players, where their success can be in the NHL.
Correct.
There's all kinds of ways, for a player to find his way in the NHL. Cole Caulfield, he's found his way. Johnny Gaudreau found his way. Lane Hudson is finding his way. And there's other players that, while not the biggest guys, Braden Point, they find their way. And having watched these players over, like, the players I just mentioned, for a long period of time, I watched Cameron Schmidt. And when I say I have no doubts about certain players, I have no doubts that Cameron Schmidt's going to be a really good NHL player.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, people say, "Oh, that's really brave." Yeah, I know that's what I got to do. So I don't know if he'll go in the first round. I don't know if he'll go top 15. I just don't know. But when I start to go and I watch a player and I see what he can do in the game, and not only what he can do in the game, what he does better than the vast majority of players in this draft. Go ahead, ask him.
Yeah. Yeah. He is a fun player to watch, and seeing those highlights and seeing him play in person is quite the thing too. It's this game is full of talent, Craig, as you know. So obviously
he's a dynamo. Like I said, he's a dynamo. He gets out on the ice, and you're just like, he just grabs you. He's one of those players that, like, he gets, and your eyes are immediately attracted to him.
Yeah.
Because what he's doing in the game, and how feisty he is, and how competitive he is, and and that, to me, is somebody that's going to continuously find a way. 31 goals last year as a 16-year-old in the Western Hockey League, and he's well on his way to blow him past that number, and he might do it before Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be fun. This game's in a good direction with stuff like this, players like this. So we're going to be a lot of fun. Craig, it's been long overdue, and we're happy to have you back on with us. It's always fun to get a visit with you, and appreciate everything you do and everything you do with us, and coming on our airwaves here, and continued success. And we'll be looking forward to on TSN and all the other great networks that you help out with, even on the NHL radio with Cooley and the rest of the gang there too. So thanks, Craig.
Well, thanks. If I can, I will. I think that if I can join you, I will. I'll always try to make time for you.
Yeah, and I do appreciate it, and you always do. So thanks, Craig. Have a good one.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Josh.